Good morning, everyone. My name is Camilla Brewer, in case you weren't really sure who was standing up here. And I feel exceptionally honored to stand up before you and share my story. I want to thank Carrie specifically for reaching out to me and asking me to speak this morning. As some of you may not know me, I figured I should probably start off with an introduction of who I am and from where I come. So, to dive right in, I am the second daughter of three to Karen Haskins Brewer and Glenn Brewer. I was born on October 30th, 1991, which makes me 25. Surprisingly and ultimately unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of candy or scary movies, so birthdays are always fun, as you can imagine. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and spent the first 10 years of my life in Bellwood. I moved to Oak Park, Illinois, where my parents still live. Now, if you've ever spoken to me and asked me where I was from, I'm sure I've told you of the many famous people and things that have come from Oak Park. A personal favorites highlight list includes Ludacris, the actor who played the father in Frasier, Iman Shumpert, Ernest Hemingway, Cecily Strong, and the scary church from Home Alone. I was lucky and fortunate to grow up in a town that encouraged inclusion and allyship across many identities such as race, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, and gender. I like to call Oak Park a bubble because I was able to see how a village could work together toward progress at a young age. I'm starting off this way to provide a context for the rest of my story. It's important to me to offer a background because it can and does inform how I have come to understand myself as well as how I process the events in my life. I view my story as a set of three lenses informing and influencing one another: my past, my present, and my future. While everyone has all three of these, they interact differently to create those stories of change, transition, and transformation, whether we like it or not. Diving deeper into my identities through self-reflection and how I have come to understand those presents itself as a story, as my story. I knew I wasn't straight at the age of 7 in second grade. Starting off strong, am I right? I had a crush on my friend Danielle, and this was nothing out of the ordinary in my family because I had a lesbian aunt and a gay uncle. I honestly had no true concept of what heterosexuality was until I was in 5th grade. I was fortunate enough to have friends who supported me and loved me so that I never truly struggled with my queer identity before age 18. I can recall one of the only times I was nervous to come out was to one of my friends, Morgan. We were best friends in middle school, and she would constantly use the phrase, "that's so gay," to describe something that was indeed not gay, much to my dismay. When I decided to tell her that I liked girls as well as boys, I had no idea how she was going to react. However, I trusted her enough to continue being my friend. Immediately after I told her, she started to cry and apologize for always saying "that's so gay," and that she loved me no matter what. Not exactly what you expect from a middle schooler. But after that moment, I rarely felt uncomfortable in my town in regards to my queer identity. In addition to sexual orientation, I was always proud of my religious background and growth. Here's an interesting history to follow. I was baptized Lutheran, per my mother's request, attended services at a Baptist church on Easter, Mother's Day, and Christmas, per my paternal grandparents' request, and was enrolled at a Catholic school, kindergarten through 4th grade, where I attended Mass twice a month. When I was in 2nd grade, big year for me, I decided I wanted to convert to Catholicism. I declared my desire to convert to my parents, to which they continually asked, "Okay, but are you sure? Do you know what that means?" And I, thinking I knew everything there was to know about Catholicism, would retort, "Of course. All my friends are Catholic at school, and they will be taking communion soon, and I don't want to be left out." So, in an effort to make me feel like I fit in, my parents let me be baptized Catholic and go through a few of the sacraments. Well, I did indeed get to take communion with my friends, but I transferred schools in 5th grade and never went to a service again. So that ended my brief stint as a Catholic. Even at a young age, I was exceptionally perceptive and could sense that my parents were searching for a religious and spiritual home. So in 7th grade, this eccentric kid, Jack, in my French class, began talking to me about his religion, Unitarian Universalism. Of course, he told me all the cool parts about it, wearing pajamas to youth group, coffee hour after service, and getting to believe whatever you want. After school that day, I told my parents we should attend a service at Unity Temple Unitarian Universalist congregation that Sunday. I was not messing around as a child. So when our family went, the sermon was about Star Wars, and we silently agreed this was the place we belonged. The core curriculum for middle schoolers and youth group was studying other religious traditions and attending services at various places of worship. These experiences set the groundwork for my ability to love and appreciate religion as a site of healing and hope. Additionally, twice a year in high school, I would attend youth conferences where about 250 youth would get together at a church to attend workshops, participate in a youth-led service, and build our community. These cons, as we affectionately call them, allowed me to meet other quirky, queer, and exceptionally intelligent youth who were politically engaged, academically driven, and thoughtfully creative. Being a part of a fairly liberal, accepting, and loving environment through most of my formative years provided me the opportunity to live unapologetically through many changes and transformations. Throughout middle school and high school, I was a typically angsty preteen and teenager, and my parents would definitely say I have not grown out of that. I surrounded myself with friends who enjoyed the same music, television, blogging sites, etc. that I did. The majority of people that I saw myself choosing to hang around were white, with the exception of my best friend, Charlotte. I saw this phenomenon also reflected in my classes, where I was one of maybe 2 or 3 non-white students. This issue only seemed to get worse as I moved through high school and took a course load that included majority honors and then AP courses. I was never insecure in my Black identity until middle or high school, when I would constantly be referred to as an Oreo, Black on the outside, white on the inside, and I didn't see Black students reflected appropriately in my classes. As a teenager, I did not have the language to be highly critical of tracking in a coherent way, but I knew it was an issue. Fortunately, a wife and husband who were family friends formed an extracurricular group that was intended to elevate Black students in science and math. It was called Math Academy. This group was run by 2 engineers who provided Black students lessons in math that were meant to get them ahead rather than playing a tutoring catch-up game. Additionally, Math Academy taught us about Black history that moved beyond just peanut butter and the cotton gin, because let's be real, that's really all school taught me. I have had to develop an understanding of what my Black identity means for me and constantly reaffirm that there is more than one way to be Black. Moving through my teenage years into my present, I have had to redefine what being Black has meant to and for me in varying contexts. When it came to deciding on where to go to college, I knew I wanted a completely different experience away from my family. I never really knew I would end up below the Mason-Dixon line where people would honestly call me a Yankee when clearly I'm a Sox fan. Moving to the South had sort of thrown my understanding of my various identities for a loop. I had to re-examine who I was and what I stood for. Moving through my past, I can see that I was faced with difficult decisions that, had I not handled then, could have changed my life drastically. Moving into my relevant present, I decided to attend the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for my undergraduate education. Why did I apply? Well, my dad traveled to North Carolina once when I was 11 and brought me back a gray shirt that had Carolina written across the chest in pink that I love to wear to gymnastics. That's honestly it. I happened upon an amazing school due to a t-shirt. I moved to North Carolina having only visited once and was ready to take on my complete transition from child to adult. I went into Carolina as a double psychology and math major with a noble intention of one day becoming a psychiatrist. As we can all see, that didn't happen. In the same semester, I took Calculus 2 and knew that wasn't for me, and Women's Studies 101. While my world was not completely flipped upside down by taking women's studies, I now had the beginning parts of a language to describe disparities in education and societal treatment of people that I saw. I wanted to learn more. So I ended up leaving Carolina with a double major in psychology and women and gender studies with a minor in sexuality studies. While I could focus on my academic coursework and experiences through those that influenced my identity, I'm choosing to take you through my co-curriculars instead. These are the activities and groups I chose to be a part of and devoted a large amount of my time to. First, I'll start with Unity Conference. This was a yearly LGBTQIA+ conference for the Southeast, of which I was co-director of for 3 years. The theme for these conferences changed every year, as did the executive board I oversaw. We had no real staff or faculty advisor, so we as a board put together this conference entirely on our own. From creating budgets, writing grants, and drafting entertainment contracts, all the way to ordering food, designing t-shirts, and booking rooms on campus. We did it all. Makes sense that I'm in student affairs now. Well, with this conference, the other co-director was one of my best friends, Sydney. She presented, and continues to present, as more masculine or androgynous, with short hair, wearing men's clothing. She also just happens to be 6'1". I, on the other hand, present very feminine. I would receive relentless questioning from people outside of our executive board as to why a straight ally was running the conference. This was truly my first instance with people believing my queer identity had to present itself in a certain way or else it was not valid. I struggled to redefine what being queer meant, even trying to dress androgynously, which lasted about a day. Ultimately, I decided that I would never be happy trying to emulate an image that other people held. It did not feel authentic to who I was and who I was becoming. Fortunately enough, I had close friends who identified within some part of an LGBTQIA community who affirmed and validated my identity as I was living it. Being put in a situation where I had to defend my sexuality to those within and outside of my communities was a new experience for me. I truly believe these experiences of such forced me to come to terms with the fact that many LGBTQIA people did not grow up in similar environments to me, and there were various ways to experience a queer identity that did not reflect mine. In addition to realizing I was in a sexual identity minority, I never truly anticipated the overwhelming sense of marginalization based on religion before coming to college. In Oak Park, your religious affiliation was just another part of something you did, but it seemed at Carolina your religious affiliation was who you were. I did not apply to an institution of higher education that did not have a Unitarian Universalist campus ministry group because I knew that was important to me and my development. However, I did not glance at the other religious organizations on campus because I figured they would sort of just exist as mine did. Well, at Carolina, some of these organizations would have people live in residence halls to try to get first and second year students to come to their fun events in order to make those students religious. Other organizations would reserve tables within the Pitt daily to advertise their weekly meetings. Additionally, there was Gary the Pitt preacher. He would spout exceptionally hateful words and occasionally verbally harass female presenting students and call them horrible names that insinuated they were of low moral standing. Needless to say, I was appalled at this sort of culture shock. Realizing that religion was a larger piece of identity than I had grown up with, I delved deeper into understanding other people's religious beliefs and experiences. I wanted to reassure myself that some things I had seen were not the norm amongst religious folks. This exploration deepened my love and appreciation for Unitarian Universalism because I was encouraged to question, explore, and learn what being religious meant to me in order to find my ultimate truth. At the beginning of every meeting with my UU campus ministry group, we would read short passages that centered us and brought us into a reverent space. While I loved crafting and going to the beach with my group, I think my favorite and most pivotal moments were the times we would sit in silence and reflect on words from various religious traditions. I would always attempt to use these words to understand how I could put my faith into action and not sit comfortably in my bubble. So for me, college was largely just kind of explaining what Unitarian Universalism was, but it was also spent building a young adult community within a faith tradition and also educating those around me who truly wanted to know my background and my story. As one can imagine, race became increasingly salient to me as an undergraduate in the South. From the history of who built UNC to the current Black Lives Matter movement, I had a wide range of experiences at Carolina. One of the most prevalent experiences that comes to mind was when I took a literature course that was focused on Black authors and creators. The professor would begin each class with a song by a Black musician. I recall 2 students sitting behind me and asking why they had to listen to this music every day when they would ultimately forget it. In that moment, it clicked that courses involving Black identities were taken out of needing to fill a credit or because someone had heard they were easy. At least half of my class was not in this room to learn and grow together. I struggled with the idea that such a large part of who I was seen as a burden to some. As I moved through my undergraduate career, I came to understand that I could not separate my Black identity from any of my other ones, such as queer or woman. I took classes, did research projects, and challenged professors on the concept of intersectionality, and that if we were going to preach it, we better practice it. I was popular in history classes, let me tell you. While I'm not going to go much deeper into my second Black identity development, I will say that this transformation has come in the form of a realization that I cannot, do not, and will not live a single issue life. Fast forward to graduate school, I am so thrilled and honored to be the first graduate assistant in the Gender LGBTQIA Center. Working there with Matthew Antonio has been a stark change from the work I was doing last year, and I could not be more grateful. I have transitioned into working at a private institution with LGBTQIA identified and ally students, and staff and faculty that are invested in my development as a professional. Being at Elon is definitely an instance of positive life-altering change. This present of mine has led me to incorporate my lived experiences into theory. Rather than bending my life to theory, I am forcing theory to bend to include me and those who share identities to mine. This change from existing in a space of discussing my feelings and having a completely different discussion about philosophies to creating a collage of these two has made me grow as a scholar and a practitioner. While the other lenses of my life are fairly set and can only be changed by looking at them differently, my future lens is constantly shifting. I wish I could speak more on this part of my life, but it hasn't happened yet, and I'm still pretty confident we haven't invented time travel. As for what I hope will happen in my near future, I aim to obtain a job within student affairs, maybe even at Elon, and increase services, support, and positive programming for underrepresented and marginalized student populations. Ultimately, and I'm talking like 10-year plan here, I want to obtain my PhD and teach within a higher education or women's and gender studies program. Additionally, I want to adopt a cat and a dog named Pickles and Snacks, respectively. This section may seem short, because it is, but that's because I want to leave my future open to change, as I know it will inevitably happen. I want to thank everyone for listening to a brief summary of my story and extend my gratitude to the Truett Center for allowing me to speak. I'm open to speaking with people about any parts of my life, and I welcome those conversations. Again, thank you.